Hey guys, hey, it's Whiskey. I am here to present to you this self-abandonment workshop. I'm super excited to do it. I did this a couple weeks ago for a domestic violence awareness group, and it was super important to me, especially since I think when it comes to those kind of groups, everyone wants to talk about physical abuse, but before you even get there, it starts in the mind. We ask the questions like, why didn't she leave? And I don't understand why. Once somebody hits you, you should just go. It's not necessarily that simple because a lot of this starts with the psychological and emotional abuse that comes with someone taking over your psyche, someone kind of slowly getting into your mind and lowering your standards, your boundaries, your self-esteem until you become the kind of a person that is accepting something that you would not normally accept. So I was excited to do this workshop because I think we don't talk about that process enough. I think with the conversation around narcissism and narcissistic abuse, we've started to get there, but we all know I have feelings about that conversation that that's not all the way kosher as far as how we run around just diagnosing everybody and saying whoever is a narcissist. But I do think there is something to be said for that work coming to the forefront, and people have gotten better at kind of discerning who is taking on nefarious traits and trying to make them susceptible to more subtle forms of abuse. So with that being said, I was really pressed to present this workshop to the patrons because I was supposed to do it in person and I didn't plan to have any slides or do a full presentation. But last minute I got COVID, which sucked. But it kind of everything happens for a reason. So I ended up doing a presentation with some slides and stuff. So I felt that that was beneficial as far as being able to recreate the presentation and have it sit here on the Patreon. So this is Uncovering the Facade Self-Abandonment Workshop. Why self-abandonment? I just love the terminology. I'm sure there's other things that you could use, but for me, the term is something that really sits with me as a person who has described myself as having abandonment issues. I'm now in the process of my healing journey of kind of rethinking what that looks like, especially as an adult. I think that one of my the YouTubers that I watch, her name is Crappy Childhood Fairy. I love the way that she words it. She does a lot of work on childhood emotional neglect and people who have dealt with that, how they grew up today and how they heal from that today. So what I love about her is that she's very real and raw. We love that. And she basically she planted the seed that has been so important to me, especially recently, especially going through a healing journey and realizing that the more you set boundaries, the more you root down into your authentic self, the more friends you are going to lose, and it's going to be a tough time. You're going to have bouts of loneliness, dark nights of the soul, or you want to go back to the person that you used to be, and all of this is a part of it. But one thing she said that really stuck with me is that as an adult, you're not abandoned, you're just kind of left. People, as adults with free will, people can decide to no longer be a part of whatever it is that you're serving. So instead of looking at things as that black and white, you're either here with me or you're gone, abandoning me, that really helped me to be an adult kind of about the process of what it is to have seasons with people, and to honor when your season with people is over. And I think that helped with a lot of my relationships as far as not taking it so deeply and personally that these seasons with people are over. And the other thing that it kind of reinforced in my mind is the fact that the when you're an adult, the only person you can really abandon is yourself. And I want to go through, and I will go through in this workshop, the ways that you can abandon yourself and what that looks like in everyday life, and how you kind of just maintain what it is to stand by yourself. And even on my Instagram lives and stuff, I talked about, just kind of a side note, and narcissism, they say, is rooted in the shame emotion. Lots of people feel shame for traumatic things that have happened to them. They feel this underlying pain that kind of sticks with them, this unforgiveness and hatred of self. And that is kind of a recurring theme when it comes to healing these traumas. And I realized that with feeling that shame is the difficult emotion of what it is to stand up for yourself, to not abandon yourself, even when you don't like yourself that much. And that's something that I've gone through time and time again with the healing journey, wanting to show up a certain way, wanting to feel like I am a certain person, that I'm all peace and love and happiness, and that I'm always doing the right thing. But I'm a human being, and it's just not true. So it has been difficult not abandoning myself when it gets tough, when it gets to the parts that I don't like about myself that are still a work in progress. So there's so many avenues to self-abandonment, and the origins of it and how to maintain not doing it. But I want to talk about just kind of the some of the things that I have struggled with in abandoning myself, and the work that I've been doing to kind of manage getting rid of those habits. So this is like the full inside look at the presentation that I did a couple of weeks ago. This was literally me up at midnight, the day before the workshop, the intro plan, putting it together. But shout out to Canva for having these really dope templates that we can use. So yes, the self-abandonment workshop, I did this through a Healing Through the Arts program, which I love because I am not a licensed professional. So I love that people are creating lanes for artsy people, for writers, for poets, for musicians to come in and talk about what it is to do the healing work. I do think there is a lot to be said for the self-healing community. And I think that that's important work to do. I just think that it's dangerous work sometimes. And we would all love to be able to have access to care and be able to have therapy and mental health services, but it's just not a fact that all of us have access to it. So when it comes to how dysregulated we are, how like nasty the world is right now, I think a lot of it comes down to even people who believe in getting mental health counseling and therapy and medication, they just don't have the access to it. So what do you do when it comes to that? So I have a lot of, even though I'm in therapy now and I have been consistently for almost coming up on 3 years now, I've been off and on for maybe the past 10 years, because I will admit that therapy is a difficult process. As far as it's like going to the emergency room, but you have to find a doctor that meshes well with you, and it might take a year or two when you're bleeding out internally. So it's a difficult process to find someone that meshes with you and that will help you get to the deeper parts of yourself that need to be rooted up. And I think that one of the things that makes it difficult is that people are not their authentic selves. We're kind of in a culture and a society where we groom everyone to not be themselves. We kind of want people to show up as the best version of themselves. And internally, if you are not there, we do like the scarcity mindset of what it is to compare yourselves to other people, to always want more, to always feel like you're not good enough. So these are the kind of things that make it difficult for people to know who they are. And if you don't know who you are, you don't know how to take care of yourself mentally, physically. Self-love is difficult, self-care is difficult, because you don't know what you would want. And it's really like a trial and error thing. And the work of what it is to get to know yourself is difficult when you're surrounded by people who want you to be how they want you to be. And then along with that work comes standing up for yourself in that, even knowing that people aren't going to like you because of it. When you are authentically yourself, then you are going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, because that's just not how we're taught to interact with people. And I think that that is just kind of where we are, and what a lot of the healing journey has been me. Has been for me. There has been a lot of like interwoven journeys, and I realized that for me, I always stand by what authenticity looks like. And it's very important for me to be showing up as myself, because for me, that shows integrity. And that is me saying that at least at the very end of the day, I showed up as the person that I wanted to be. And that has helped me get to a deeper level of thinking, realizing that it all boils down to who you really are. So that's kind of the name of the self-abandonment workshop, was uncovering the facade. Because when you abandon yourself, you are showing up as someone that is not authentically you. So what does it look like to uncover the facade of the person you've been pretending to be all along? The person that is within you, that loves you, and that would not accept abuse from anyone else otherwise. It's just the facade that you put on. It's this agreement that you made in order to be loved. And that definitely was my thing. So throughout my art journey, I have spoken in poems about relationship trauma. And throughout the years in my personal healing journey, my poetry has evolved, where it was just coming from this dark place of despair, where I learned to, through the expression, I learned to find my voice, and how important it was for me to tell my story, to commune with other people with similar stories, and then to start think about action items. What is the work to heal? So then through the healing journey, I mean, you get to a point where you can only do so many like healing bubble baths, where you're like, all right, is this it? The self-love, the self-care, like what else is there? The inner child work, all that stuff that we see online, that's just like the pretty stuff, and all the stuff of like accusing narcissists and feeling very validated from all this material that is naming the abuse that has happened to you. But after a while, you start looking forward into what is the next part. And of course, because this is me, I discovered that the next part is the tough parts of the healing journey, which is accountability, and what it is to regain your sovereignty and then maintain it from that point on. And then at the end, I just want to talk about like actionable steps that can be taken to help you to stay in your own mind, to stay in your own experience, to continue to do this work of loving ourselves and not abandoning ourselves. So, as I said, uncovering the facade is the name of the workshop. And I spoke just, about me a little bit in my healing journey. The name is Whiskey Girl, but that is my brand name. But that is the only difference really that separates me from my brand and the poems that I write and everything that I say. Early on, as I said, everything goes back to authenticity. Early on, I realized that I don't want to create a brand that is nothing like me. I want to make sure that I can keep up with what the heck is going on and not be driven by whatever is going on in trendy culture or whoever other people want me to be. So it's been my own personal healing journey, and that has been so interesting, right? But we will get into all the nitty gritty. The main thing, I guess, is that I feel that there is a place in creativity in the arts to help people along with their creative journeys. I do feel like my calling is that I've been given the gift of articulation, given the gift of simplifying some of these concepts of what it is to feel this deep burning pain, to I guess articulate what it is to build trauma in your body, in your psyche, and what it is to feel that the burning pain that it is, and to articulate the process of what it is to root all of that stuff out and get it out for good. It is a long process. I will be on this journey for life, but I feel like the calling is to tell my story. I kind of have, if I had a concentration in healing, it would be basically the relationship trauma that I have experienced since I got married young, and from the decision of having a tumultuous, very brief marriage and making the decision to leave, I realized that I was kind of like making a controversial decision that was paving a life path for myself that was maybe atypical for, nice church girls. So while I was going through dealing what it is to go through a divorce at such a young age when I didn't even believe in that, I realized that I needed to find a healthy outlet for me to process this stuff. And for me, that was writing. I started blogging. I started the Embrace the Crazy blog. And that was basically like, my life is nuts right now. This is not what I had planned out for myself. This is not who I thought I would be, especially at this young age. And that was a release for me, along with talking about my personal experience. I did kind of what I do in the Patreon now. I reacted to kind of like pop culture and the things that were going on in the mainstream to kind of help me just process what it is to live life as a Black woman, coming from the church atmosphere, just kind of branching out into survival mode and figuring it out on my own. So, and this is a blog that I ended up starting, I think, after I had my second child. So, just life as a single mom and what it was for me to navigate relationships and dating in this new kind of world and life I had created for myself. And throughout these, major relationships in my life, throughout the dating process, I just realized that I was getting pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. And, so the trauma that I always talk about in my poems is just like what happens with sexual abuse, with physical abuse. And the biggest thing is emotional and psychological abuse. As I said, this has been the recurring theme throughout my life in all of my relationships. It's actually an abuse system that I have to be careful of, even on work, having abusive bosses, having low-key abusive friends that kind of talk down to you or minimize, or you can just feel in the energy that they don't really like you. So it's kind of like this work is important because staying on top of your mindset, staying strong in your convictions and your beliefs about you will protect you from a lot of these abuse systems. So, beyond the self-care, self-love, that was a major process for me. And I think it is for a lot of people, especially Black women, because we are not taught to love ourselves. We're taught to sacrifice and love everybody else. And hopefully some of that will trickle onto you. I don't know where that came from, but that is BS. So the process of learning what it is to actually choose yourself, to actually love yourself, to actually come from a mindset of I'm pouring so deeply into my cup that it runs over, and whoever is around for the access, they can have the access, and that in and of itself is abundance. That was a concept that TK, shout out to TK, introduced to me um a while ago, and I was just like, what? That don't make sense. I don't even understand the concept of pouring so much into me that my cup runs over. But really, it is basically redirecting the what you give to others into yourself. And there are, I will say personally, for me, this has not just been my own journey. This has been a journey that has come about and been so successful because of divine intervention. And I think that's where the boundaries and accountability comes from, is really having a relationship with God and realizing that you can't pour too much into yourself. What is the balance between what you sacrifice and give to others, and making sure that self-love doesn't turn into narcissism, where it turns into being all about you, and then you're back into this pattern of trying to control everything around you to make sure that you're not feeling pain, which I do think is another thing that is rooted in narcissism. And I could see how we are having a tough time as a people trying to do the self-love work because it doesn't come naturally to us. It's basically a mindset that is against how the world is set up. The world is not set up, especially a capitalistic world, is not set up for you to love yourself, but to do the work of loving yourself inwardly and loving others outwardly is very difficult. And grace is a thing, and the soft parts, doing inner child work, is a thing. But I really started to think, like, what's next? What is next in this healing process? We can't continue to be babies in it. We can't continue to just push the self-love and self-care. And kind of what I've discovered is that self-love and self-care is all the gateway for the softer things to help you manage the tougher parts, which is accountability work, which is building a strong mind, having strong boundaries, having high self esteem, and being self actualized. But it's not like you reach the pinnacle and you're just there and it sits with you forever. These are things that you have to maintain throughout. So, for me, the next level of healing and where I am now, and what relates back to the book Sovereign that I wrote, is rulership, dominion. Once you acquire the kingdom, what are you going to do? How are you going to rule? So, this is the season of reigning, what it is to reign from the throne of having a strong mind, what it is to have set boundaries and continue to keep them, to continue um determining what, I suppose, like, what boundaries fit with the version of you that you are now. What is the trajectory of your healing journey, and how do you plan to get stronger, conquer more, do more, reach more people, love more, and enjoy life more robustly? And the thing is that life is always going to happen to you. There's always going to be tragedy, there's always going to be sadness, and there's always going to be these evil power structures of control and abuse that are trying to thwart what your purpose is on earth. And it is our job to be mentally strong and to maintain the love that we have for ourselves in a way that we can combat these kind of things. So when it comes to me and my healing journey, that's really where I am, and that's why I have the Patreon, so we can look at the deeper things that come with this. And I think the other thing I would just say, especially since this is the Patreon and I can talk more candidly about the spirituality point, I think that when it comes to maintaining high self-esteem and healing, especially from trauma, we can't just do the gateway parts, because the gateway parts will have you in a victim mindset. And that's really where you can run into having strongholds, because the belief is that, this happened to me. You can run into being entitled, feeling like because you were mishandled, because you experienced the trauma, because you were abused, that you deserve more than other people, or that you should be looked on in favor more than other people, that people should have more empathy for you than they do other people. So there's so many, like, nets that can catch you if you stay stuck in the wrong mindset about this stuff. So I really want to do the work of helping people to propel forward out of the gateway of, the entry level. This is what we're doing to finally acknowledge that we need healing, to name the players involved in the abuse process, and move forward, really, um and not only in a new mindset, but to maintain that mindset. Because sometimes it's like when you start a new job, you love it, you're doing all the great work and everything's like, you submit all the projects on time and you're the best worker, and then 2 years in, it's just like, I'll get to it when I get, they know me, I'm not going to get fired. So it's kind of like what it is to maintain your own excellency, for a better way, for lack of a better way to put it. And yeah, with that, the tough parts of healing, I always say to people that, this is why I feel like my love gets rejected. I truly believe that the other side of love is accountability. And when you love yourself, you hold yourself accountable. And that's exactly the season I've entered into. And I feel like that is something that makes me an asset for my friends and the people that are around me. I feel like iron sharpens iron. That's what we're here to do, to help to check each other and help to do the inner work to make sure that we are showing up the way that we want to show up in this world. So the tougher parts of healing, and I think when I say that the workshop is that I truly acknowledge and think that, especially when you're healing from deep psychological abusive relationships, is that you have to take your time in the process of realizing what has happened to you, of releasing that pain, of coming back into yourself. That needs to run its full course before you get into the tougher parts of healing, at least I believe. So I think at this point, I just kind of told people, if you're not there yet, you do not have to see this workshop, because I think that it's a fine line when we start talking online. And that's why I wish, the internet is, a place that I love and I hate, because I love that we're having these conversations, but there's no room for nuance. And I think that is one of those things when we talk about victim blaming. And there are a lot of instances where, there's a fine line between wanting someone to take accountability for their involvement in something and being accused of victim blaming. So I just say that if you're still in the victim mindset, if you're not curious, and that's the safe way of going into these things, right, is being curious about your own behavior. And that way you're coming from a non-judgmental space to learn more about you. And if there's something that you could do, could have done, or well, I shouldn't say could have done, because that's all an abuse that we've experienced in the past, but things that you can do to kind of prevent it, as preventative maintenance, to make sure that these kind of scenarios and situations don't recur in your life. And I think that that's, dangerous work to start doing, especially if you are a self healer. But I feel like that's why we have the self care tools in place to help us through this work. And going through the dark nights of the soul is the thing. And it's like the second layer of peeling back abuse and what it is to have dealt with abuse and to come out at it on another side. I will say for me, I started unlocking all of this, like just reading. I read this article about, they said that, I think it was like serial killers and murders and stuff. They did a study with them on how they find their prey, or the people that they kind of yeah, that they prey on essentially. And they said, like, they look at people who are not in touch with their bodies, they look at people who are not paying attention to their surroundings, and there's certain things that they look at that gives them the background for who is susceptible to this, and who would be easy prey. And I thought about that. That was a seed that was planted in me around the time that I was reading The Body Keeps Score, which talks about how we store trauma in our body and how it shows up and how we dissociate, how we're not present in there. And I think that's a lot of us. We're walking around on our cell phones, we're not paying attention, we're not present in our moments. So there are a lot of like little things that can make us targeted for abusers if you're susceptible to going along with groupthink, or if you're the easygoing one in your friend group. These are all things where people can kind of look at that stuff, and people who are predators, because people who are abusive, whether they are manipulative or whether they are physically abusive or whether they get into your psyche, all of these people are predators. And how they can kind of sniff out prey is by acknowledging or observing the way that you act in groups, the way that you act when you're alone, and seeing if you're distracted, and if do you stand up for yourself, all of those things. So when it comes to accountability work, it's difficult to say like, okay, I have a part in this. There's a way that you can look at it and be like, you can look at it negatively and loop back into the victim mindset of okay, you're victim blaming now, or you could take it as an empowering thing, which I did, but I had to get there. It took me years to get here. But the empowering thing is that, oh, okay, I was worried that I had no power over this, but I actually do. And that is actually refreshing to hear. And I wanted to share, I ended up sharing my self abandonment behaviors. And these seem like small things, but they are actually large things in the grand scheme of abandoning your authenticity and showing up as someone who is a character of yourself, or a more acceptable and palatable version of yourself in order to please others. These are all the gateway behaviors that can lead you into abusive systems. So this is one I don't do anymore. And it's so funny because this used to be my thing, right? I used to laugh at jokes that I don't find humorous. And that seems like a very small thing, but I will say, like, I used to live with my brother, and his misogynist friends would come over, and we would all like drink and sit and talk. And I realized that I would be in the middle, like making these jokes about women, laughing at their jokes about women, and just thinking that this stuff was okay. The version of me that I am now, I just, would not do that anymore. And I don't care if it ruins the vibe. You need to be strong enough in yourself where somebody can't ruin your vibe. And if you're bold enough to be telling these kind of jokes, then you need to stand in whatever that truth is. So laughing at jokes that I don't find humor is like a big one, because it was the gateway to like um just just kind of going along to get along and not wanting to ruin the moment. And I think that's difficult when you stand up for yourself in energetic ways and in the subtle ways. You will become a buzzkill, or people will notice the difference, and it seems like it's going to put you out there so much. But at this point in time, I don't care about being put out there. I care about standing on what is authentic to me and what feels good to me. And it's okay if other people are laughing. You got what you want. Do you really need me to laugh at this if it's not something that I agree with it? The other thing, with this is the big thing, is showing empathy toward behavior that I don't agree with, especially in intimate relationships where I feel like I've always had these like, I think it's something about me where it's good, right? It makes people feel at ease, and they tell me personal things about themselves and get vulnerable. And in intimate partner relationships, I find a dude with like get vulnerable and tell me stories about his heyday, or tell me about other stuff that he's done to women or just in life. And it'd be stuff that I don't agree with, but I understand that they are trying to get me to feel sorry for them or feel their, I guess, their side, or be empathetic to their side of the story. And I don't do this anymore. One of the big reasons, I think, aside from it being inauthentic, is I think it's a form of grooming. I think that it's a way sometimes that people try to soften you to the character of who they are, and telling you these kind of like stories where it's like you're not there in real time. So because you're in the presence of the person, you're more willing to be like, I'll give an example is that I had an ex that was going through a situation with his ex-girlfriend, and they were going back and forth. And the issue was that some of her money was accident, like stimulus money from the pandemic was accidentally deposited, or it was like her, I don't remember what money it was, but it was deposited into his account and he was spending it. And it was like this whole thing about giving it back. This is financial abuse. He knew it wasn't his money, and that's totally wrong. And it's nothing that I would condone when in my right mind. But because I was spending time in intimacy with this dude, because he told me the story like, oh, I'm so bothered and how dare she, it was just kind of like I was being groomed to take the side. On the one hand, I was being groomed to take his side because I'm his girl. That's what you do. You ride or die. But also, I wasn't in my right mind. I was weak minded at the time, and I knew that it would cause subconsciously, right? I knew that it would cause tension in our relationship if I was like, hey, yo, this is not cool. So I did not say anything. The me of today, we would have been fighting because that is not cool. That's financial abuse. And no part of that is okay. But it's so funny. It's like the social conditioning of this is your man, so you stand by whatever he does, and you're not supposed to speak up about those things when this didn't sit well with me. And I don't know why I expressed any empathy toward that situation because he was just dead wrong. I think he just presented it to me in a way that was like chaotic, like his mom was involved and there was all this like drama with it. I was just like, oh my God, that's a lot of drama. Like that's stressful for you. Who cares? You're wrong and you deserve all the stress and all the karma that's coming to you. And that kind of goes along with agreeing to get along, just kind of like agreeing with people just because you don't want to rock the boat. That is how you are abandoning yourself, because if you don't agree, it's okay if you don't agree. Emotionally mature people should stick around even in disagreements. Disagreement doesn't have to be a war with another person. It's exactly what it is. You don't agree, and that's fine. You are a separate human being from everyone else having your own human experience. Why would you agree with everyone? It's just not logical. And I think we've just like lost the ability of what it is to get along with people without abandoning ourselves. So it feels unnatural to still hang out or chop it up with people who don't agree. But you can do that. And I am one of those people, I'm not disagreeable in nature, but if it's something where I don't agree, I feel like I've become more comfortable expressing that and just being okay with like that's okay if you're not okay with it. And it shows me who you are if you cannot handle the disagreement, or if your boundary is like whatever the topic is that we disagree on, your boundary could be like I don't want to be friends with people who such and such, and it's like cool, our season is over, we disagree. So accepting blame to keep the peace. This one is was a favorite of mine, especially in my job. I am in an admin supportive role, so working for higher ups, especially like egotistical ones. I work in a lobby office, so take that as you will. And sometimes people get caught up in like who is the blame and scapegoating people. And it's just really annoying because I'm more of a like, okay, we know there's a problem. Let's move forward and find the solution. And then we can figure out like who the problem was and how that's going to go. But for the most part, let's just move forward and be solutions oriented. But a lot of people want to dwell on who's the blame. And that comes from what I can tell, the anxiety of perfectionism, of people not wanting to be accused of being imperfect. So they quickly look for who they can blame it on so they themselves won't be blamed. So I would take on the mantle of accepting the blame just to keep the peace, and I was always cool to do that. And I would even just say, like, look, tell him it was my fault. Let's just move forward. Tell him this, apologize, whatever. And I stopped doing that because then it put me in the position of being the scapegoat more often than I would have liked to. And in situations where I did not give myself permission to be blamed. But once you put yourself in that position, people are like, oh, she's okay with it. They peep, whether consciously or subconsciously, that you're a doormat and you are okay if people scapegoat you, even and you're not going to stand up for yourself. So I stopped accepting the blame to keep the peace. I just let motherfuckers fight it out, figure it out, work it out. I don't care. I'm not about to step in and be like, cool, we can blame me. I'm not going to step in and take the rap for something that has nothing to do with me just to keep the peace. Another thing is not sharing honest opinions. I don't think that I always have to share my opinion, especially when holding space for people. But I can see times in the past where I did not share my honest opinion about certain situations or behaviors that may have given people the idea that I agreed with them in some kind of way, and may have given the people the idea of the kind of person that they thought I was. So I could see where it comes off as disingenuous on my part if I'm not sharing an honest opinion, or if I'm just, it, that one's self-explanatory. Not sharing my honest opinion was a way of abandoning myself, and I try my best not to do that anymore. I do think there's a fine line. Like you can be tactful when you say things, you can be direct, and that's the thing I'm actually working on now is how to remain in direct communication with people, but also not being harsh in those direct communications, being emotionally aware and intelligent enough to know how to communicate the information to said persons without stepping on any sensitive minefields. So, but that's my work. I'm going to share my honest opinion. Um, Another self-abandonment behavior is not asking for what I need. That has been tied into my femininity work, which has been really important to me, although it's so boring because I just feel like I'm just, I'm a girly girl. And that's so boring on the healing journey and stuff. And it's so stereotypical because we're in this movement of a lot of women are saying they want the soft life, they want to rest in their femininity, and there are a lot of reasons for that, right? But also there's like this weird counterfeit movement of women who are doing this because they want to attract a certain kind of man. I hate that. But I will say that looking into my feminine and masculine wounds has been an integral part of my healing journey. And this is one of them, is realizing that you having a voice speaking your speech and realizing that you are not too much because of it, that you are allowed to have a voice, that we are here, as the feminine to be that voice is a thing. And we're in a society that kind of goes against that, where you're not really supposed to ask for what you need, especially as a Black woman. Your life is all about what other people need. But I'm starting to learn what it is to ask for exactly what I need, instead of setting up energetic expectations for people and being really mad and disappointed when they don't provide those things. It's a way of keeping myself guarded and keeping myself, yeah, protected, I should say, is that I ask for what I need and I give people the opportunity to show up and provide those needs. And that way, that is a way that I advocate for myself before things get, to the point where I'm advocating for myself in a harmful situation or in a negative situation. If I ask for what I need up front, I am doing the work of advocating for myself in the beginning, so no one can gaslight or pretend that they didn't know what I wanted or needed. If I'm saying it in the beginning, I am showing up as who I am and asking for what I need, overextending myself and not saying no. I'm sure that's something for a lot of us where it's difficult to say no to people, but I teach my daughters to ask each other questions. Ask if you can have the last slice of pizza, or if somebody says, ask if you could share their toy, whatever the case may be. And if they say no, you have to sit in that, because when you ask a question, the expectation should not be that the other person is going to acquiesce to what you want. The expectation is that the person is going to answer out of their authentic selves. This has bit me in the foot as far as the lesson with the youngins or whatever, because when they say no to each other, there's nothing I can do. Sometimes it'd be like, that's rude, you could have shared, but that's part of having free will, and you don't always have to give someone a yes. I find myself, when I'm overextending myself and not saying no to people, I'm showing up flaky, I'm missing appointments, and I'm not putting good work into all the projects that I have going, because I'm overextending myself. And that messes with my own personal integrity. And I don't like that, because I want to show up as a person with integrity. So I'm really looking at what it looks like to streamline and have the guts to say no. Which I didn't do, so now I have an event tomorrow. But the guts to say no to certain situations, and all of this is a process. We're all getting there. The next one is interesting to me. It is something I realized only as I was writing down this list of some of my common self-abandonment behaviors. But one of the ways I don't stand within my own authenticity is premature trust. We operate on a level of, you give people the trust up front, or you let them earn it and you vet people. And I used to operate out of giving people premature trust because I just love everybody and want us to be great. But I realized that as a person who has gone through abuse, who has been manipulated and used, that this is not a way that I can operate for safety purposes. And it's just smarter for me to have a vetting process and to not offer premature trust, even though people want to be trusted up front. That is a nice way, a nice currency exchange if you like it, but I do not. And I think that when you don't offer trust upfront, people try to typecast you as a certain type of person. And there's this whole rhetoric around like being difficult to get to know, or difficult to earn trust with people. That's just where I am right now. That is something that I have in place to protect me. And also, when it comes to staying authentic to who I am better if I can take my time, stay in my own energy, and not worry about what other people want from me until they have proven themselves. So, and the last thing is that neglecting activities that connect me to my intuition. And really, that's just the realization that when I got back into my body, I started walking more, exercising, doing the work to manage my anxiety. It connected me more to God spiritually. It was taking care of my vessel, so that there are more ways for God to enter. There are more ways for me to connect with not just God and spirituality, but for more ways for me to connect to how your body reacts to certain situations when you're in danger. If you're dissociated and in your phone or not paying attention, or if you have a subconscious belief that you are not worthy and you're just waiting for somebody to come rescue you, or whatever the case may be, you're not paying attention to the butterflies, the red flags, the kind of ways that your body reacts to things that is alerting you to danger, alerting you to something that's familiar. One of the things I love that psychologists talk about now online is that, we associate butterflies with someone making you feel good and this being like this, oh, I love them thing. But it's really like your body alerting you to danger. It's alerting you to the familiarity of something's not right. It's alerting you to anxiety. And there's been, plenty of times before where I felt that. And I've been in the presence of people that I've been very close to, felt very close to, love very deeply. And I felt those kind of like prisons of this is not safe. You're not safe. Even though I want to convince myself that I'm safe, my body is telling me that I'm not. But I have to do the work to stay in touch with my body enough to and be able to listen and trust it. So when I neglect activities that connect me back to my body and my intuition, I am abandoning myself. And that is also something that is good for when you are starting to date, or if you have new people around you, if you're in the vetting process, to stay on top of your physical body work, so that and sometimes the self-abandonment comes with, I'm so wrapped up in this person, I'm so distracted by this person, the things that I do to connect me to me fall by the wayside because I'm just so consumed by this person mentally. That is a version of abandoning yourself, because you're saying that your interest or love or whatever, or excitement about this person is more interesting than the work that you do to maintain your routines, to maintain the things that make you feel good. It's almost like you're replacing what makes they make you feel good, you're replacing it with the stuff that you do and have within your power to maintain feeling good. So, but the exercises, these are some of mine. What of these do you relate to, and what are some of yours? And a lot of these seem so harmless, but they really are the gateway into how we fall into these abusive systems. If people can see this about you, then they know that you can be manipulated, and they can start the grooming process of what it is to get you to change your psyche and thought processes, to drop your routines, to trust them. And next thing you know, that you're being gaslit, you're being scapegoated, and you're being psychologically abused, which is where it starts before you even get to physical abuse, if that's the case. But a lot of this talk and rhetoric about narcissistic abuse, this is all psychological abuse, and it's very damaging. It's just that we're only now having the articulation to talk about just how damaging it is to people. So, one of the things, as I said earlier, that keeps me on top of this healing work is the realization that it all boils down to my authenticity. I want to make sure that I'm showing up in the world as my true self. And I think that when I first came across the terminology people pleasing, it sounds like very benign, but what really struck me and made me like be more proactive and active about getting out of this mindset is the concept and the realization that it's disingenuous when you show up and you're just kind of doing whatever other people want you to do, and you're not practicing your nose, you're not letting people know who you really are, what you really want to do, how you really want to show up, then you're being disingenuous. And that's just something I don't like, because I want to be a person of integrity, and showing up under a facade is not showing integrity to me. So as I do the work of integrity, which I define as making sure all the parts in my mind, my heart, body, soul are married together, making sure that I'm a cohesive person. Yes, there's that thing a couple of years ago, we were all like, yeah, duality, but it's like, it shouldn't be insane, right? It shouldn't just be like parts of you that make no sense and you compartmentalize so much that you're different people everywhere you go. I want to be steadfast in who I am, strong in my mindset, so that everywhere I go, that I am this person. And once people see that, they know energetically that's not a person that I can mess with. That's not a person who is easy to manipulate. and being in entertainment and doing poetry and stuff and being so vocal about my healing process and some aspects of my personal life, I really do have to guard my heart a lot. I have to guard who I'm around, and I have to guard a lot of like sycophants and people who come around just because they want something from me. And in order for me to do this, I have to be pretty strong in the mindset and in who I am. And the reality is self-abandonment is operating within an inauthenticity that opens us up to equally disingenuous partners in abuse systems. So I had to realize that although it's not right what was done to me, I had to realize that it's not even that I attracted the stuff in my life. I don't think that that's fair to say, but it just kind of made me like, you are the people that you hang around to some extent. I just don't like saying the attraction stuff because I don't believe in the law of attraction. I'm not into that at all. But it's just kind of the patterns of when you look back at your life and where you are and what you're going through. If you look at your circle and the people around you, normally they're going through similar, they have similar beliefs. Normally we hang around people who are similar to us. So I realized that looking at the patterns of past relationships, business relationships, or the people who kind of felt comfortable around me. And I guess that's a good way to put it. Like you attract everybody because we're all human beings and we attract each other. But the people who usually stay are the people who feel familiar. And if familiarity it to you is being disingenuous, is showing up inauthentically to please other people, then you are likely to be around people who operate in the same way. It's just that it might not be in the benign way of, yay, I just want everybody to be happy. It might be in the malicious way of, I'm disingenuous in order to use people and get what I want. And so it's like if these people all feel familiar to each other, you're going to be in a familiar environment that's mixed with both of these kinds of people. So it's not necessarily that everyone's a narcissist and you're attracting narcissists. If you really look at the behavior of narcissists, if you look at what it is to manipulate people in order to get what you want in transactional relationships, it's kind of the culture that we're being taught now. So this villainizing everybody all willy-nilly is interesting to me without looking in the mirror to find out ways that we have shown up in these ways, and also ways that it is a manipulation to be like, I'm just going to do whatever they want me to do, and in exchange they will give me love. That is a manipulation. That is not you being your true self. That is abandoning the real you in order to get love from someone else, which is manipulation. So the mantra, the affirmation, the thing to say over and over to yourself until you get it into your psyche is, my first love is me. I accept all parts, no matter how hard it gets. I will never leave. And that's where we get into, I think I said at the beginning of the video, where as an adult, as a child, you can be abandoned because children are supposed to be taken care of. But when it comes to as an adult, you can't be abandoned. People are just leaving. And you are a sovereign being, right? You are a human being and you have the tools, access to the tools to move forward, even if everyone leaves. If they decide they don't want to be in your company, if they decide they disagree with who you are authentically, if they decide they don't want to deal with you anymore, and even if they're a narcissist in the discard phase, they have the right to not be around you anymore. As adults with free will, this is how it works. But you don't have to abandon yourself. And once you stick by you, all parts of you, then you are more likely to feel familiar with that feeling, what it is to love yourself. I've seen a couple of thought processes going around where people on the internet are saying, like, we hate the concept that you have to first love yourself before anyone else can love you. Obviously not. There are so many versions of love that are out there. If you're willing to accept any version of them, sure, like that's fine. And who's to say that someone won't come along and give you a nice, healthy, healing love? But you increase your odds when you learn how to love yourself, when you learn how to hold space for your dark parts. And you are, by doing that work, you are showing by example how you expect to be treated by other people. So, no, you do not need to love yourself in order to be loved by other people, but it sure as heck makes it easier for them. And you're probably more likely to get the kind of love that you want because you're giving it to yourself first. And if we're in this like cesspool of life where we're all attracted to what's familiar, you'll be able to feel what's familiar to you in the love that you give yourself. You'll be like, this is what feels good to me. If someone's bringing that in, it won't, your system will not reject it. Your intuition will not, have these fire alarms going off because it's matching the love that you're giving to yourself. And it's the new familiar, right? The familiar that we don't want to have from past abusive relationships or past abusive families or jobs or wherever it was coming from. We want to re-regulate our nervous systems. We want to renew our mindset so that we can understand what healthy love feels like. And if you have abandonment issues and you are worried about people leaving you, it's not an issue of people leaving you, it's an issue of you leaving yourself in exchange for wanting them to never leave you. And it's never going to work that way ever. And that's a harsh reality because people die, and people have the right to free will, and there's no guarantee with any of this stuff. Even if you make vows for forever, there's no guarantee. As long as that person is operating under the free will, that's just a contract. You can breach a contract at any time. So the contract should never be that if I abandon myself, will you love me and never leave me? If I cater to you, it's just not a good contract to be in. So no matter how hard it gets, you have to be the person to never leave you. And honestly, by default, you can't leave you anyway. So physically, you can't, unless you die. So the concept is that you are going to be within you anyway. So how do you make that work? How do you hold space for all parts of you so that you are always there and you are never compromising yourself? And I will say, I was doing a live the other day, and I talked about ways that I abandon myself or try to leave myself as well. Is that when I don't want to sit with my dark parts, I'm like, oh, I should go on a dating app or something and find somebody to love. I find that when I'm in my darkest parts, when there's healing work that I don't want to do, when there's just like life stuff that I have struggled with because my executive dysfunction is trash, it makes me want to seek after frivolous pleasures, to seek after the external validation of other people in order to feel whole. That is a form of abandoning myself and entering into bad contracts where it's like, if you distract me, if you fill the hole that I think needs to be filled, then I will cater to you, or I will be distracted from this enough to completely ignore it. And that's the job of abandoning your work. That's abandoning your healing work and chasing after frivolous pleasures. So the journaling prompts, and this is all for you, and I hope this stuff is helpful. And if you use them, please let me know how you feel about it. But it's one of the things to kind of get to know yourself is, if you've gotten into kind of the self-love, self-care work, it is good to look into like, what does feel good to you? How do you show love to yourself? What is it like? I saw a post that was really good actually, and it talked about the five love languages and how ways that you can provide for yourself. So like one of mine is, well, one, all of them are mine, but my favorite ones are quality time and physical touch. So, after a shower, I spend time moisturizing my body. I spend time like dancing and moving. For me, that's like a physical touch, being in touch with my body. And quality time, I spend a lot of time alone. I spend time with myself to make sure I know, like, I can process the day and be like, how are you feeling about this? This happened to you today. What do you feel? So it's really good to do the work of kind of like dating yourself like you would on a date. You ask people, you want to know all about them. So doing the work of finding out how you show love to yourself and then examining how you wish to receive love from others. Is that the same as how you show love to yourself, what you expect to get back from other people? Or is there another way that you prefer people to show love to you? And how does that work? Do you feel the love, or is this something you think that this is how I would like to receive love from other people, and then when they do it you don't feel satisfied because that might not be it? But the question at the bottom of all of these is, how did you show up for yourself today? When it comes to abandonment, leaving yourself, it's not showing up for yourself, it's not advocating for yourself, it's not speaking up, it's not showing up authentic. So how do you show up for yourself today? That is the recurring journaling prompt that you should, that could be used every day within your journaling process. And I do recommend journaling every day, although I don't do it. So do as I say, not as I do. And the good thing is a relationship inventory. I took a relationship class like a while ago, to kind of get over, like, I was getting stuck in these breakups, and I had a breakup like about 2 years ago, and I was like, I'm too old to go through the process of like losing productivity for 6 months, of going out of my mind, feeling depressed and like I'm not worthy. So I literally enrolled in one of these like virtual classes where, they talk you through these things. And one of the things we did was like an inventory of all of our past relationships and kind of looking into the common threads of them, and like, what can I do differently the next time, kind of thing, and how can I choose differently the next time. So since then, I just thought the idea of inventories is like a really great one. And this, I think, is good to list your close friends and current and past intimate partners and examine each relationship to determine if the way they loved and cared for you aligned with how you love yourself or prefer to receive love. And I think you may look into examining these and finds out that you have been in like more subtle abuse systems. Maybe you were in friendships where you didn't feel properly seen or heard, but you stayed in it because you told yourself that this is fun and I enjoy this person, but really enjoying you as well. So I think doing a relationship inventory is fruitful, and it might root up some important things. And as you can see at the bottom, how did you show up for yourself today is the question of the century. How can I show up for myself, stand up for myself in relationships that don't align with how I need to be loved? So once you do the inventory, and if you find out that in the past you've been involved in relationships and abuse systems where you that person was not showing up for you in the way that you need, what does it look like to change that moving forward? The work to change behaviors that are innate within us is difficult to do. That's why I like journaling, because I feel like it puts everything at the forefront, and it's something that you can literally go back to and read through, and it helps you to track your progress and stay on top of your mindsets through each phase of your healing. So when you do the relationship inventory, how can you show up for yourself now if you still have those relationships? How can you stand up and redirect the relationship into getting the love that you want in the way that you want it out of these relationships? Whether it'll be sharing more of yourself, showing more of yourself so that they can see, huh, okay, they've got more layers to them that I haven't been catering to or haven't known about, or whether it's a direct conversation where you're just like, look, I'm doing this healing work and I realize that I am not asking for what I want and need. So here's what I want and need. So how do you plan to go about doing that work? And if it's a past relationship, my God, do not go back and resurrect it. But think of the ways that you could have shown up, or how this version of you could have shown up in those relationships to assert the love that the way that you need to be loved. How could you have shown up as an advocate for yourself in those moments and in those relationships? So that was the self-abandonment workshop that I did a couple weeks ago. And here's the like, thank you for listening and stuff. I was very proud of it, and I'm still on the journey of doing this work, and it's very important to me especially since I deal with what I call abandonment issues and worried about who's going to leave me. And I've stayed in relationships way too long because just the stigma of feeling like you're being left. But I will say, life-changing stuff when the crappy childhood fairy said, you're not being abandoned, you're an adult. And I think that helped me as well because throughout the loss of the relationships and business partners and friendships over the past 2 years that I've been deep within this healing journey, I have had to give up people. I have had to realign. I have had to leave people. And I certainly would not categorize me not aligning with people or being in disagreement with people. I would not consider that abandoning them. So it helped me to put things in perspective that abandonment issues is just like how our psyche processes these things. And yes, it could have happened in childhood, but as you get older, it's difficult to recalibrate your mind to think that, okay, this is not abandonment. This is just they're done. So, what am I going to do? I have power. How am I going to move? How am I going to act knowing that they're done? And you don't have to take or receive it as an abandonment. You can receive it as the season is over. And that was something really helpful for me in looking into wow, you really can only abandon yourself. And as afraid as I am of being abandoned, I am actively engaged in the art of leaving myself. So I really only have myself to blame for this. But once I stick by me, once I know what it is to show up in my authenticity and to not be afraid to compromise my values or break my boundaries for other people, then I feel stronger mentally, and it helps me to maintain the high self-esteem, the strong mind that I need to not fall into these manipulative systems anymore. It just keeps me on top of my game. It keeps me in touch with my body, and it keeps me aware of kind of like the inner workings and I call them energetic contracts that people try to engage me in. It's like, are you coming around because you want to be my friend? You like me authentically for who I am, and that's it, and we can vibe and chill? Or are you coming around because you want something from me and you want to enter into some sort of contract where if I make you laugh enough, or if I introduce you to the right people, or give you enough advice, then you will feel like I'm doing my part in a friendship. I will say that we are in such a society where we've been taught to consume each other. And I'm really doing the work to undo that. And I want to be one of those people where I'm just intentional about hanging out with people because I enjoy their company and I just like it, and they don't have to do anything for me to to feel like they are earning that, or like that they're shucking and jiving enough or putting on enough of a show for me to be entertained in that friendship. It's just like, no, it's cool. We have the same core values. Let's do some life together and let's accept each other as we are authentically. But before you get to that point, you have to do the work of standing in, showing up authentically. And I think a lot of that work is tied to not abandoning yourself and healing those wounds, healing rejection wounds, and looking at what it is to, even if they externally do not accept me, at all times I accept me. And the things that I do not accept, I would do the work to change them. And while I'm doing that work, I will show myself grace. And that is easier said than done, but we're all doing this work. So anyway, let me know what you think of this workshop. It's my heart. I can't wait to do more. I can't wait to bring you more. And if you love the content that is happening in here, tell your homies and your friends. I want to bring more people in here. It's about 16 patrons now. I want to make this a more robust place where we can have conversations. I want to start doing more live things where we can all have conversations. So if you guys are interested in that, please let me know, because I'm so excited to be presenting all of this deeper healing stuff within this space. It feels like a safe space to me. I definitely hope it feels like that to you. And if you have any topics or anything that you want me to cover, be sure to let me know. I'm happy to do it. I'm here to serve. You all have been so supportive of me I have been so appreciative, and I just look forward to finding ways to give back what you have given to me, not in a way that is self-abandoning, but in a way that makes sense for my bandwidth. Anyway, thank you all for your time, and to all a good night.